Oh, yeah, man. Rag rugs. There comes a time in the reduce, reuse, recycle circuit when you just can't. Exhibit A. Old dish towels. At some point, all laundry products fail. Okay, fail isn't fair. There comes a point that no matter how powerful or cutting edge the project, the grunge defeats the clean. And while stains are aesthetically displeasing, that's not such a big deal. But at some point you look at the stains and you think, even though I know I bleached the hell out of that, that can't be healthy. Add in stains from, blood, body fluid, ugh, right? Okay. So I have enjoyed my spa nights as they exist now, sitting around, boiling towels, bandages, wraps, what have you, enjoying a lovely steam facial, perhaps toasting some marshmallows, and heavens knows, the midst of a zombie apocalypse is the time to reuse to the point of disintegration. But I still have some standards. My blindingly brilliant idea was to overdye the towels, cut them into strips, and weave them into rugs or totes. As resource conservation is always a factor, I've been saving until I had a big enough pile and a reasonable need. And then I decided to do some ice dyeing. I know, but even a ZA can't stop the need for creativity and artistry. When you ice dye, there is a puddle of dye in the bottom of the container once the ice melts. In times past, I've placed a grate, and then you put your fabric or your yarn, and it keeps it out of the pool. This time around, crumpled up dish towels. Put those in the bottom of the container. Layer of fabric, yarn, what have you. Double dipping, right? No reason to waste, and I didn't need these to be designed, I guess you could say, is the best thing. Sprinkle the dye. Ice dye does all kinds of fun stuff. Hang on. I'm back. I try to deal with the ghouls when they start thumping against the walls. Have you noticed the ones that thump into the walls turn into shriekers? And then they explode into nasty goo. At least the wraiths don't shriek. Though last week I had a bunch of them that were trying some version of psh, 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 to entice me out. Not the point. Focus, Pinky. I turned my towels into bias. Why am I using air quotes? Because I did not bother to find true bias. Squares, rectangles, didn't really matter. Fold them in half into a triangle, whacked it down the diagonal, stitch it back together. Nice little parallelogram. Stitch that into a circle. And then you start cutting your strips off of them. I'm trying some different things. No big whoopee. I like the continuous strips rather than the knotting or splicing methods traditionally used in rag rugs. So, there we go. Ta-da! Rag weft, ready to use. There's a nice big one. That's a whole towel. That's like a third of a towel. Yeah, something like that. Anyhow, doesn't matter. Now, as this is rag and I'm using old dish towels, I did not want to use any of my nice weaving yarns for the warp. And I did not have any rug warp because I don't do rugs. So I had to improvise. The motto of any cataclysm. I had scavenged a stash of old overlock threads. I can safely say they were never going to be used as thread again. If it snaps with just a little tug, it will never make it through the machine. So a bit ago, in the old days, I saw somebody on YouTube turning serger thread into yarn. She simply spooled the thread together into a cake and then crocheted with the new yarn. That's still too delicate for my use. As you can see, I've already got a broken one here. Enter ancient tech, the drop spindle. Now, I'll be honest, when I had the idea of how to deal with the dozens of spools of thread, I did not think past the thought of turning it into yarn. Hence, I simply gathered groups of threads, mostly singular color bunches, and wound those into cakes. I never stopped to consider how fine or thick the end yarn would be after plying. I also didn't think much about color blending, which is rather hysterical given I'm a color maximalist and I've been blending colors practically since birth. Oh well. Anyway, process. Grab a cake, spin it on the spindle, wind it off into another cake because I've only got the one drop spindle. Once I have two of those, I twist those two together, other way, and I get a 2-ply yarn. Talk about slow fashion. And to think, for thousands of years, this is what you had to do if you wanted to wear something other than skins. If I remember long ago when I went in down the rabbit hole, the first spinning wheel, or at least mention of one, around 100 BCE with wheels actually showing up 500 to 1000 CE. Yeah, I know, squirrel. Anyhow, at some point I scavenged an e-spinner and was off to the races. Ish. I won't bore you with the trials and tribulations here. Once I had several pleasing yarns, it was time to do the math. Weaving math. Certain and uncertain numbers. And my brain likes to flip numbers. So besides the obvious of how wide and how long, there's how dense. What pattern? Shrinkage, draw-in, finishing, many opportunities to screw up. Many opportunities. So the math would be 24 inches wide times 12 ends per inch is 288 ends wide. I've got 2 floating salvages, which gets me 292, but I should probably add, let's see, if I make, add a little bit on either side, or maybe I'll do dense. Let's do that. Let's do double density on the outside edges to really hold those selvages, as well as the floating. Okay, that'll work. 8. So if this is 12, I'm going to try and do it as plain weave. Well, if I thread that as plain, double floating selvages, I'll run fishing line. I'll keep it nice and tight, do my weights, pulling off the side since I don't have a temple, and therefore leave it at its density. I still should add a little bit on either side to make sure it ends at 24. If this shrinks like everything else does, except the towels have already been washed and washed and washed, 10%, be not quite 2.5 inches. But if it's a little wider, that's okay. Of course, if it's a little narrower, that's okay too, because it's just for the back door. I'm not trying to make something that fits a specific spot or a tote bag. So even if it ended up at 22 off, that would still be plenty wide. Okay. So we're going to stick to planning on 24 inches. And if it shrinks a little width-wise, that's okay. I'm not going to double up the density for the selvages. I will just do 2 floating selvage ends with the fishing line. Weighted, that'll help hold all of it. So we'll keep it at, what was that, 292 ends. And then 72, and you know it's going to shrink. So I should say 80, shouldn't I? What I did with the scarves. Of course, this is synthetic, and there's absolutely no give whatsoever. All right, if I planned it to be, let's say, 78. Once it comes off, hopefully that's 72 if it's still a little wide. I'll just weave it to 72. That way this is also a test run, because if it's slightly shorter, that also isn't going to matter for there. So plan for 72. I'm going to cut those other strips to do the hem, so I don't need fringe. I do need loom waste of around 2 yards and some testing zone or overages, not 2 yards, 2 feet, 4. So that does get me to 3 1/3 yards. So if I do a 4-yard warp, it's going to be 2 yards for the rug and another yard plus for the rug or a bag or a something. Okay, so that's the plan. And this came out to, how many yards did I think I had of that one? 789 yards. Ooh, I made a lot of that one. Cool. So if I do 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1, that'll work. That'll work. That'll work. That'll work. Wind it that way. So I said what, 292 at 4 yards. Ooh, I get to use the warping mill this time because 4 yards is long enough. Biased hem, yard to make something else with. I think I have a plan. Maybe, possibly. Very pretty. Did I need to create a meticulous crossing for a rag project? No. Did I do it anyway? Yes. Much safer for me to stick to best practices and reduce the chance of screw-ups. Notice I didn't say eliminate. Some bag clips to tame the warp, and bright blessings on the weaver who came up with that idea. Chain to keep it all contained, and on to dressing the loom. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing out there, but I'm not going to look. At least they seem to be just passing through. Okay, leave sticks to tension, space them out, attach them to the back apron, place spacers, threading 288 of them. I decided to go with a point twill over 8 shafts. Is that overkill for a rag rug? No. Even in these times, I will not lower my aesthetic standards. So, whilst dressing the loom, with the very beginning of winding everything onto the back beam spaced out, I discovered that I had spaced out while measuring out the warp and missed 48 strands. 48. Fixable, thank heavens. I had plenty of yarn left, so I measured out the other 48 and continued spacing it out so I could get it onto the beam. And when I finished that, I had 4 extra. I don't know where I counted wrong, but one way or the other, I counted wrong. So there we go. I had 4 extra. So then I started threading. And I got everything threaded over, let's see, about 280 threads, give or take. And it was off. And that's when I realized that while I had divided the total number of warp ends needed by 4, which is how many strands of yarn I was working with, or colors, I had not divided by 14, which was how many strands were in a repeat. So I was ending with, a asymmetrical, because, you know, I'm doing this, and so it ended. And then came the question. Did I add more yarns so that I could finish the little V there? Did I pull some out so that it would finish in the little V and just the whole project would be maybe a ½ inch narrower? Or did I live with it being asymmetrical? I know that as an artist, asymmetry adds interest, but I also know, for me, I have a really hard time not doing symmetrical. And then I reminded myself, this is a rag rug for the back door. I don't know that anybody's even going to be able to see the point twill that I'm doing, which means asymmetry. Blech. Having an asymmetrical edge isn't going to be a big deal. And that saves me because, of course, if I added, I'd have to have all these weighted warp ends hanging off the back beam, and I end up messing with that often enough. I didn't want to go there. So that's what I'm looking at now. I am slaying the reed up to 288 plus the other 2 floating selvages, and then I can tension, and then I can actually start weaving, which is the fun part. Not that slaying the reed, threading isn't fun. Of course it's fun. So much fun. Why else would I keep weaving? So much fun. But other parts are more fun. So that's where I am. Then on to tying up the treadles. If you don't know about floor looms, the basics, you step on a treadle, a pedal, and it lifts a loom. It lifts the loom. It lifts the shaft or a harness. So to do the design, treadle 1 lifts shaft 1 and 2. Treadle 2 lifts shafts 2 and 3. Treadle 3 lifts shaft 3 and 4, and so on. Basics there. As this is a counterbalance loom, that means my tie-up is actually treadle 1, lift 1 and 2, lower 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Treadle 2, lift 2 and 3, lower 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. I do a number on my back, getting all that up. But prepped all my rags, started weaving. Since, at least for that batch of rags, I had them in sets of 2, the plan was mirror the colors start to finish. So start, there we go, and mirror, finish it off. There we go. Which I did. Oh yeah, man. There we go. Midway. Floop. Other half. I deliberately planned extra warp to play with. Whenever you start a weaving project, you should put on extra warp to sample and see how things are going to turn out. Did I do that? But again, rag, rug. So had about a yard to play with, which could be a small rug or a tote bag. Who knows? Either way, I was going to need more rag weft. Conveniently, I had more ugly towels and yarn that needed dyeing for another project. Dyed, washed, cut, sewn, cut, weave. As soon as I remove the weaving from the loom, I run a zigzag stitch on the end. To prevent the pieces from unraveling. While I am normally a big fan of fringe, not so much for a rug in a household of small beings, furry fritters, and lazy vacuuming. So I cut some of my towel strips wider and turned them into binding. No dangerous fringe. And no turned under hem, which then dictates which side is up. Now, some of you might have noticed a slight flaw in this design. I used reactive dye for cellulose fibers, cotton towels, which means between the sun and laundering, this is going to fade. However, the beauty of it is I can always over dye the whole rug when it gets too faded. So there we have it. One backdoor mat to go across the width of the sliding glass door while it's open and some extra. And one, I'm not sure yet. Bath mat, tote, something, who knows? In the meantime, remember, enjoy your apocalypse. It's a good thing.